Another day of the MLS is Back tournament is in the books, and today we saw a couple of teams that have punched their ticket into the next round of the MLS is Back tournament, and we also saw a bit of an upset in the morning game as we saw the Chicago Fire pull an upset against the defending champion by winning 2-1, and also get a little bit revenge on the Sounders as this time they came out on the other end of the 2-1 resort that they unfortunately suffer a heartbreaking one on the opening day against the Sounders at CenturyLink Field. Now, in the first half, I thought the game was very bland and mostly uneventful, and this, of course, is going to happen with a lot of these morning games, and especially when you have two Western Conference teams just bright and early up in the morning to play these games. You do not expect there's going to be a lot of action that is going to happen, and that just felt like both teams was just half asleep in the first half. Now, the second half, things eventually did pick up, and we did start seeing goals that has happened, and it started in the 52nd minute when Robert Beric was scored from Pineda. This was an absolute terrible mistake from Arriaga, who completely misjudged the flight of the ball and allowed Pineda to able to get to it. Then he feeds the ball to Beric, who easily puts it away to give Chicago the 1-0 lead. However, Seattle did find an equalizer in the 76th minute, and it came from the substitute Bawana scoring for Morris to tie the game up at 1 apiece. But Chicago, they looked like they were not going to try to repeat what happened on opening day and suffer for a heartbreaking loss and a potential stoppage time winner that they're going to concede, as they really pushed to try to get that second goal. Beric almost got that second goal and almost got the second goal of this game for him as his shot just went wide. But the very next sequence on the corner, Pineda would be able to score that after Jimenez delivered a perfect ball from the corner spot, and Chicago is now up 2-1 at that point, and they would end up holding on to that 2-1 win. As you know, the Sounders, they did try to push forward late in the game, but to no avail, and that, as I said, the Fire got a little bit of a revenge on the Sounders and came away on the other end of the 2-1 resort compared to opening day. Now, in terms of the shots in this game, the Chicago Fire had 10 shots compared to 7 that the Sounders had, 5 shots on goal compared to 1 that the Sounders had, 2 shots off target compared to 3 that the Sounders had. Both teams had 3 shots that was blocked. Possession-wise, 40% possession compared to 60% possession that the Seattle Sounders had. And for the Seattle Sounders, yeah, they're in trouble right now, because after 2 match day, they only have a point, and you got to think that the next game against the Vancouver Whitecaps, it's an absolute must win for them, because if they don't win that game or get all 3 points in that game, I don't think they're going to be moving on into the round of 16, and that this would definitely be a pretty big shocker, seeing the defending champion unable to move on into the round of 16. Although at the same time, since MLS is using this World Cup format style for the MLS Back tournament, I don't think it's a lot of surprise that you see a defending champion get knocked out in the group stage, since for whatever reason, when we saw in the World Cup and then won the World Cup the previous edition, would find a way to get themselves knocked out in the group stage round. So Sounders look like they could be in danger of following that trend, even though technically there was no MLS's Back tournament prior to this edition, and that, of course, is only a tournament that we are using right now, mainly because of the whole pandemic that is happening. But that being said, moving on into the next match, and finally, they did it. Orlando City has finally made it to the playoffs. Now, I'm not quite sure would you call make it to the round of 16 in this MLS's Back tournament counts as a playoff appearance, but I'm pretty sure if you ask any Orlando City fans, they're going to say yes. This finally counts, and that our 5-year playoff drought has finally come to an end, as they got a crucial 3-1 win against NYCFC in this game and become the first team to move on into the round of 16 in this tournament. There was no Maxi Morales in this game for NYCFC due to injuries, and when I saw that, I have a feeling NYCFC was going to be in trouble in this game. And boy, they were in trouble in the first 10 minutes of this game when Chris Mueller scores from Matinho in the 4th minute to give Orlando City a 1-0 lead. Then he would score again in the 9th minute from Dwyer and Juan, and it's 2-0. Orlando City, just like that, straight off the bat, and that Orlando was just all over NYCFC in the first 30 minutes. And I'll tell you what, that hydration break that NYCFC eventually would get couldn't come at a better time, because if that hydration break didn't happen, I think Orlando City would have just continued to be all over NYCFC, and that the scoreline could have easily been 3 or 4-0 as we head into halftime. But because that hydration break happened, that kind of break up the rhythm that Orlando City had, because I thought after the hydration break, NYCFC looked like they were the better team. Castellanos had a one-on-one opportunity, but Gallas denied him. Pedro Gallas had an incredible game in this game, and eventually getting the crucial 3 points. Then in the 38th minute, NYCFC eventually did get one back, and this was an incredible strike from Medina, from Aber, and that you could argue that could definitely be up for a nomination of the goal of the tournament. And by the way, that's also the first goal that NYCFC have scored this season. I mean, it's been taking them almost 4 games to finally score their first goal, but at least they finally did it, and at least that kind of monkey is now in the world. Unfortunately, he was denied by the post. Then in the second half, NYCFC really started to push for the equalizer and control the game, and I thought Orlando City was trying to sit back, which I was getting a little bit nervous seeing Orlando City sitting deeper and deeper, because knowing Orlando City, they eventually are going to find a way to concede a goal if they try to do that. And then in the 77th minute, it looked like eventually NYCFC was going to get the equalizer, but Pedro Gallas, again, he had an incredible game in this one, was able to deny both Mackay Stevens and Castellanos with the double save. And then in the 81st minute, Akindele scores to make it 3-1 in favor of Orlando City, and that was pretty much game, set, and match there at that point. Now, one thing I want to highlight in terms of the latter part of this game is that there was actually 10 minutes of stoppage time in this game, and the reason why I want to highlight that is because why in the world is there 10 minutes of stoppage time in this game when yesterday, when we saw both the LAFC versus Houston game and the Galaxy versus Timbers game, both had 4 minutes of stoppage time? Like, I'm not complaining the fact that what we saw in the second half is not worthy of 10 minutes of stoppage, but what we saw in the second half of this game, and in terms of the stoppage, looked very similar to yesterday game. And yet, yesterday game, as I said, only 4 minutes of stoppage time for both of those games, and yet this one gets 10 minutes of stoppage. So, I have no idea what is going on with the fourth official and why it is being inconsistent, but obviously NYCFC definitely would take the fact that there was 10 minutes for them to potentially rescue a draw, and they almost make things very interesting straight off the bat when Matrita unfortunately hits the post. But unfortunately, after that, Orlando City was able to kind of control the game and just seal out the game to get that massive 3 points to move on into the next round of the round of 16. And in terms of the shots in this game, NYCFC actually had 26 shots in this game compared to 12 that Orlando City had. 8 shots on goal compared to 7 that Orlando City had. Third compared to 1 that Orlando City has. 5 shots that was blocked compared to 4 that Orlando City had. And possession-wise, 52% possession compared to 48% possession. And in many ways, you can say that NYCFC just had an Orlando City syndrome in this game. Like, they had so many shots in this game and could have potentially score a ton of goals, but the only reason why they didn't is because they weren't being very clinical. And it's kind of funny, I make an Orlando City reference of them not not being clinical in front of goal against the opposition, and it's even more funny that the opposition that was facing in this game was none other than Orlando City themselves. But either way, moving on into the last game of this I was gonna say this week, but it's actually for tonight's MLS is back tournament action, is Inter Miami and the Union. And the Union is another team that is going to be moving on into the round of 16 as they got that 2-1 win against Inter Miami in this one. It was very good to see that Andre Reyes was back in the starting 11 because, just a couple of days ago, he suffered a very scary injury against Orlando City on the opening day. But now looks like he is back in the starting 11, although we know for a fact that he's not going to be back in the starting 11 for the next game, as I will mention a little bit later of why that is the case. Now, in the first half, just 5 minutes into the game, Wagner would give the Union a 1-0 lead for that. I mean, just some very sloppy defense for Inter Miami that, of course, allowed that goal to happen. But at the same time, I also would want to question Luis Robles in that instant where, yeah, I feel like he should have saved that. Like, I think that one is one that I think he to have back, because that shot from Wagner wasn't actually hit very well. And again, just like what I said the other time about Sean Johnson against when NYCFC play against Philly, that looked like the one that you would think that it should have been saved, but fortunately that wasn't the case, and that the Union, again, for the second game in a row, they get benefit of the fact that their opposition goalkeeper didn't really look very, very sharp and made a little bit of a goalkeeping howler because of that. Now, in the 22nd minute, Andre Blake was able to deny Carenza chances to equalize. Blake basically picked up where he left off in that game against NYC. In the 26th minute, Shibilko looked like he got the second goal for the Union, but they actually disallowed it because of offside. And I gotta say, this was very, very close from being offside. And some way, I'm kind of surprised they didn't actually go to VAR to see whether or not if it is the case. I mean, I did only see like one replay out of that, and the angle definitely wasn't very well to kind of rule to see whether or not if it was offside or not. But from that angle, I feel like it looked like he was just offside, and that I would have been surprised if they do go to VAR, that they of course would decide to disallow that goal. Now in the 36th minute, Pizarro would equalize for Inter Miami at that point. And I also thought that there was also a lot of no call for rough challenges in this game. Like the referee in this game, let's just say he didn't really had the best of games here, and there's time where it looked like he was kind of out of breath with the way that he was kind of running down the pitch, and that I think later on when there was actually a VAR or replay that was taking place, I bet the only reason why he wanted to look at the VAR screen was mainly because he just wanted to have a drink of water. But yeah, there was a lot of rough challenge, but there was a lot of no call for those rough challenge. And yes, I know some people are angry the fact that there's been a ton of no call on some of those rough challenge that has happened, but I'm fine with the fact that if there's a lot of rough challenge that is going to be happening, and that as long as the referee are going to be controlling it in a way where it doesn't kind of spark with both teams started to get into each other's faces, I have no problem with all those no call, and that at least they're being consistent in terms of calling or no calling those rough challenge that has happened throughout this game. Now in the second half, there was early one-on-one chances for both teams, and then eventually the Union would retake that lead when Shibilko would score from Aronson. What a counterattack this was. Like, just I think 20 seconds before this goal was scored, Inter Miami was actually taking a free kick, and the fact that they just completely gone on the other way on the counterattack was just something that is completely sublime. And that if you want to see like a perfect counter attack that is orchestrated beautifully, this would be the one that would actually be the case, because again, it was a beautiful full orchestra of a counterattack, and in the end it led to the second goal and eventually would be the winning goal of this game. Speaking of that VAR that I mentioned earlier, they did of course look at VAR after it looked like Miami was going to have a penalty to potentially have a chance to equalize, but they actually overruled that PK and ruled that Glinson did not actually either handball or shove Kesewetter in that. I mean, it was very tough to see what exactly were they actually looking at. And well, there's actually two things that they could have looked at. They could have looked at either the handball on Glinson or the shove that he did on Kesewetter. And the one on Kesewetter, the shove, I don't think that was a penalty and that there wasn't really a lot of contact. Now, the handball one, that was a very interesting one. And I feel like, if MLS is actually using the new rule that the IFAB have just implemented, where if the ball struck your hand, no matter if your hand is in a natural position or an unnatural position, it's gonna be a penalty. But I guess MLS probably are still not using that rule yet, because in this instant, it seemed like they decided to waive it off because they think Glinson's hand is in an unnatural or is in a natural position, and he couldn't really avoid to basically avoid that ball hitting his hand. So yeah, I understand Miami fan will be angry because of the fact that you would think that the new rule would be implemented and that should have been a penalty because of the new rule being implemented, but it doesn't seem like that was the case in this game, and therefore that's why it wasn't a penalty. Now, in the 85th minute, or the 83rd minute that is, Roman Torres hit an absolute bullet of a header that actually came off the post. And I mentioned how Blake actually had a very decent game. I think this was the only mistake that he made, where he wasn't able to get to the ball first and allow Roman Torres to get to it. And anytime if you're a goalkeeper are unable to get to the ball first when the ball is coming into the box from a cross or from a corner, you are basically in no man's land, and you are really praying that that player did not hit that one into the back of the net. Because if that is the case, then that is always going to be the goalkeeper's fault for the reason why that goal is going to be conceded. But thankfully for Blake, that ball actually hits the post, and that Inter Miami were denied their chance to get the equalizer. Then, in the first minute of stoppage time, Robles actually keep his side alive, as the Union looked like they were trying to do a carbon copy of the second goal that they scored and went on a good counterattack. But unfortunately, this time Shabilko wasn't able to finish that goal, as Robles able to make a key save. And as time was winding down, and as it looked like it was more and more the Union was going to walk out with the 3 points, Reyes unfortunately commits a foul and got his second yellow card of the game. So, as I mentioned, that is the reason why he's not going to be available for the next game, because of the red card. And I have a feeling that this could be also the final action that he might be involved in this tournament, because with this loss that Inter Miami have suffered, this could be a loss where they are really on the brinks of being eliminated. I know earlier in the preview I mentioned how teams, when you have 0 points heading into the final week, you probably have just no chance whatsoever, and that you're gonna be eliminated heading to that. Well, technically it's not true, because I forgot to mention the fact that the best third place rule actually is implemented in this tournament, and that the best 4 third place team is also going to be moving on into this tournament. So there's still a chance that Inter Miami could be one of those best 4 third place team that is moving on into the tournament, but that chances is definitely not very high, knowing the fact that they of course lost their first 2 games, and their goal differential does not look very good heading into that. So yeah, Miami is definitely going to be staring down elimination as they head into the final week, and they will be playing another team that is facing elimination in next week game against NYCFC, where I feel like in that game, if both of those teams either draw in that game, or if one of those teams is able to not pick up the 3 points, then they of course are officially going to be eliminated from the tournament. Shots in this game, Miami had 8 shots compared to 10 that the Union has. 3 shots on goal compared to 4 that the Union has. 2 shots off target compared to 4 that the Union has. 3 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that the Union has. And possession-wise, 55% possession compared to 45% possession that Miami has. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for another day of the review of the MLS is Back tournament. Tomorrow, obviously, there's only going to be one game, which is the Vancouver Whitecaps versus the San Jose Earthquakes. Obviously, I am very excited about that game because my Quakes team is involved in that one. But I'm also very nervous about that game, knowing the fact that that is an absolute must-win for the Quakes, and that yeah, tomorrow review, I would either be ecstatic the fact that, well, I wouldn't say ecstatic because, beating the Whitecaps is nothing really special, but I'll be happy the fact that the Quakes are now just one step away from moving on into the next round, or the fact that I would be absolutely angry of how once again the Quakes let me down, and of all the things that goes right against them and are in their favor, they still find a way to screw it up in the end. But we'll just have to see how tomorrow's game is gonna look like. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.